The flames danced higher, as Tabitha Preston fed another letter into the fire pit behind the general store, her hands trembling with equal parts rage and relief as she watched years of false promises turn to ash under the Colorado sky. It was late September in 1882, and the mountain air of Salida carried the first hints of autumn's chill. But Tabitha felt nothing except the heat radiating from the small fire she had built in the clearing behind her father's store. Her auburn hair had escaped its pins during her fury, and tears tracked down her cheeks as she pulled letter after letter from the wooden box she had kept hidden under her bed for 3 years. Each one was filled with declarations of love from Clayton Winters, the banker's son who had courted her faithfully, written her poetry, and promised her the world. Each one was a lie. She had discovered the truth only that morning when she had gone to the bank to deposit the week's earnings from the store. Clayton stood at the counter with a beautiful blonde woman draped on his arm, introducing her as his wife of 6 months. His wife, from Denver. The shock had nearly knocked Tabitha to her knees. When Clayton saw her standing there, frozen in the doorway, he had the audacity to smile at her as if they were merely acquaintances, as if he had not written her love letters promising marriage just 8 months ago, as if he had not kissed her under the cottonwood trees by the Arkansas River and told her she was his whole world. Now those letters were burning, and Tabitha felt a savage satisfaction watching the elaborate script curl and blacken. She grabbed another handful, nearly throwing them into the flames. "That is quite a fire you have got going there." Tabitha spun around, startled. A man stood at the edge of the clearing, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell past his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore dusty chaps over worn denim, a simple cotton shirt, and a leather vest. A cowboy, clearly, probably one of the many ranch hands who came into town for supplies. She had never seen him before, and Salida was small enough that she knew most faces. "It is none of your concern," Tabitha said, her voice rough from crying. She turned back to the fire, hoping he would take the hint and leave. Instead, she heard footsteps approaching. "I recognize that look," the cowboy said quietly. "Someone broke your heart." I said it is none of your concern, but her voice cracked on the last word, betraying her. The cowboy was silent for a moment, then she heard movement. When she glanced over, she saw him gathering fallen branches from the edge of the clearing. He walked over to the fire pit and added them to her blaze, stoking it until the flames leapt higher. "Good riddance to that," he said firmly, his voice carrying a conviction that made something in Tabitha's chest tighten. "Whatever made you cry like this deserves to burn." Tabitha stared at him, this strange cowboy who had appeared out of nowhere and was now helping her destroy her past without asking for explanations or offering unwanted advice. His face was weathered from years in the sun, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he was not smiling now. He looked to be in his mid-20s, perhaps 25 or 26, only a few years older than her own 22 years. "Thank you," she whispered, and then, because the kindness in his gesture broke something loose inside her, she added, "He was going to marry me, or so he said in all these letters. Turns out he married someone else 6 months ago and never bothered to tell me." The cowboy's jaw tightened. "Then he was a fool and a coward. I was the fool for believing him." "No," the cowboy shook his head firmly. "Trusting someone who claimed to love you does not make you a fool. Breaking that trust made him unworthy of it in the first place." Tabitha felt fresh tears spring to her eyes, but these were different somehow. She fed the last of the letters into the fire and watched them burn. The wooden box she had kept them in sat empty at her feet. "That too?" the cowboy asked, nodding at the box. Tabitha hesitated, then nodded. He picked it up and placed it gently on top of the fire. The dry wood caught immediately, and within minutes there was nothing left but ashes and embers. They stood together in silence, watching the fire burn down. Finally, the cowboy spoke again. "I am Quinn Nichols. I just signed on at the Morrison Ranch west of town. Tabitha Preston. My father owns the general store. I know the one. I was heading there when I heard someone moving around back here." He glanced at her. "Do you want to talk about it? Sometimes it helps." Tabitha shook her head. "I think I have done enough crying over Clayton Winters for one lifetime. But thank you for the kindling, Mr. Nichols, and for not telling me I should forgive him or give him another chance or any of the other useless things people say. Call me Quinn, and I would never say any of that. A man who lies to a woman's face while promising her the world deserves exactly what those letters got." He kicked at the ashes with his boot. "Though I suppose you will see him around town still." The thought made Tabitha's stomach turn. "I suppose I will have to. Salada is not big enough to avoid anyone for long." "Then you should walk into that bank with your head high and your shoulders back," Quinn said. "Do not give him the satisfaction of seeing you ashamed or hurt. Let him squirm." Despite everything, Tabitha felt a small smile tug at her lips. "That is rather ruthless advice. I have found ruthlessness serves better than moping when someone has wronged you." Quinn's expression softened slightly. "But take time to feel what you feel first. Burning letters is a good start." Tabitha looked at the dying fire, then at this strange cowboy who had somehow said exactly what she needed to hear. "I should get back inside. My father will wonder where I have gone. And I should get those supplies before the store closes." Quinn tipped his hat to her. "It was nice to meet you, Miss Preston, even under such circumstances." "Tabitha," she corrected. "And thank you again, Quinn." She watched him walk around to the front of the building, his stride easy and confident, before she turned to kick dirt over the last of the embers. Something about the encounter had steadied her, given her back a bit of the strength that had drained away when she saw Clayton with his wife. Quinn was right. She would hold her head high. She would not let Clayton Winters see her broken. When Tabitha entered through the back door of the store, her father looked up from the ledger he was checking. Preston George was a kind man in his 50s with gray threading through his brown hair and spectacles perched on his nose. He took one look at his daughter's red-rimmed eyes and tear-stained face and set down his pen. "What happened?" he asked, concern immediate in his voice. Tabitha told him everything, starting with seeing Clayton at the bank and ending with burning the letters. She left out the part about Quinn Nichols helping her, though she was not entirely sure why. Her father's face darkened as she spoke, anger flashing in his usually gentle eyes. "That boy should be horsewhipped. His father will hear about this." "No, Papa." Tabitha shook her head. "It will not change anything. Clayton made his choice and now I have to live with it. Making a scene will only humiliate me further." "You have nothing to be humiliated about. I know that. But the town gossips will not see it that way." Tabitha straightened her shoulders, channeling the strength she had felt when Quinn told her to walk with her head high. "I am done crying over him. He is not worth my tears." Her father studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You are stronger than I give you credit for sometimes. Your mother would be proud." The mention of her mother, who had died when Tabitha was 15, brought a fresh wave of emotion, but Tabitha pushed it down. She had cried enough for one day. Instead, she tied on her apron and went to help the customer who had just entered the store. The customer was Quinn Nichols. He smiled at her, a small, understanding smile that did not demand anything from her, and began gathering supplies from the shelves. Tabitha's father gave her a curious look, but said nothing as she helped Quinn find everything on his list: coffee, beans, flour, sugar, tobacco, and a new whetstone for sharpening knives. "You settling in at the Morrison place?" her father asked as he tallied the purchases. "Yes, sir. Started 3 days ago. Good outfit. Mr. Morrison runs a tight operation but treats his men fair. He is a good man, known him for years." Her father wrapped the supplies in brown paper and twine. "That will be $4.30. Quinn paid and gathered his parcels. As he turned to leave, he caught Tabitha's eye and gave her a small nod, almost imperceptible. She found herself nodding back, a silent acknowledgement of what had passed between them behind the store. Over the following days, Tabitha threw herself into her work at the store with renewed vigor. She helped customers, organized inventory, updated the ledgers, and smiled until her face hurt. When she saw Clayton on the street the first time, her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst from her chest, but she kept her head high and her expression neutral, just as Quinn had advised. Clayton looked uncomfortable and quickly crossed to the other side of the street. The small victory felt enormous. The second time she saw Clayton, he was with his wife, who was indeed as beautiful as Tabitha remembered, all golden curls and porcelain skin. The woman clung to Clayton's arm possessively, and Tabitha realized with a start that she felt more pity than pain. The woman had married a liar and a coward, even if she did not know it yet. Tabitha counted herself lucky to have discovered the truth before she had bound her life to his. Quinn Nichols came into the store every week, always polite, always friendly, but never pushing beyond the boundaries of casual acquaintance. He would ask how she was doing, make pleasant conversation about the weather or the ranch, pay for his supplies, and leave. Each time, Tabitha found herself looking forward to his visits more than she wanted to admit. It was early November when things shifted. Tabitha was sweeping the front porch of the store when a rider came thundering into town, shouting about a fire at the Morrison Ranch. Her heart seized in her chest as she watched men pour out of buildings, organizing a group to ride out and help. She thought of Quinn, of his quiet kindness, and fear gripped her so tightly she could barely breathe. Her father was already gathering buckets and shovels. "Stay here and mind the store," he told her. "But Papa, I will send word as soon as we know anything." He kissed her forehead and mounted his horse, joining the stream of men heading west out of town. The hours that followed were agony. Tabitha tried to keep busy, but every time she heard hoofbeats, she rushed to the window, hoping for news. It was not until sunset that her father finally returned, exhausted and covered in soot. "It was the barn," he said, accepting the cup of water Tabitha thrust at him. "Lightning strike from that storm last night must have smoldered all day before catching. They lost the building and some hay, but the horses all made it out. No one was badly hurt, though a few men have burns." "What about Quinn Nichols?" The words burst out before Tabitha could stop them. Her father gave her a knowing look. "He is fine. He was actually the one who noticed the smoke first and got everyone organized to fight it. Mr. Morrison says he saved half the ranch with his quick thinking." Relief flooded through Tabitha so powerfully that her knees went weak. She sat down hard on the nearest chair. "You care about him," her father said softly. "It was not a question. I barely know him." "That was not what I asked." Tabitha looked up at her father, this man who had raised her alone for 7 years, who had never pushed her toward any particular path, but had always supported whatever choices she made. "He was kind to me when I needed kindness, when I found out about Clayton. I know. I saw him leave that day. I figured something had happened out back, but you seemed steadier afterwards, so I did not press." Her father sat down across from her. "Quinn Nichols is a good man from what I have seen, nothing like Clayton Winters. I am not ready to trust anyone like that again. I am not saying you should." I am just saying, do not let one liar and coward poison you against all men. There are good ones out there, the kind who keep their promises and mean what they say." Tabitha nodded, but uncertainty still churned in her chest. How was she supposed to tell the difference? Clayton had seemed genuine. He had written her beautiful letters full of poetry and passion. He had looked into her eyes and told her he would love her forever. How was she supposed to trust her own judgment after being so thoroughly deceived? The next morning, Quinn came into the store, and Tabitha's breath caught at the sight of him. His hands were wrapped in white bandages, and there was an angry red burn on his left forearm that the bandage did not cover. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, but he smiled when he saw her. "I heard you were hurt," Tabitha said, abandoning the counter to meet him in the middle of the store. "Just some burns, nothing serious." He flexed his fingers gingerly. "Doc Thompson fixed me up, said I will be good as new in a week or two. You saved the ranch." Quinn shrugged, looking embarrassed. "I did what anyone would have done, just happened to be in the right place to smell the smoke." "That is not what my father said. He said you organized everyone and kept your head when others were panicking." "Your father is kind to say so." Quinn shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. "Actually, I came to town for more than supplies today. There is a church social this Saturday evening. I was wondering if you might want to attend with me." Tabitha's heart leapt and plummeted at the same time. Part of her desperately wanted to say yes, to spend more time with this man who had shown her nothing but kindness and respect. But another part of her, the part that still ached from Clayton's betrayal, recoiled at the idea of trusting someone new. Quinn must have seen the war on her face because he quickly added, "As friends. No expectations or pressure. I just thought you might like the company, and I am still fairly new in town. It would be nice to have someone to talk to who is not a ranch hand or a cow." The gentle humor in his voice, combined with the clear understanding that she was not ready for anything more than friendship, made Tabitha's decision easier. "I would like that. As friends." Quinn's smile was genuine and warm. "Good. I will pick you up at 6. 6 is perfect." After he left, Tabitha found herself smiling for the first time in weeks. A real smile that came from somewhere deep inside rather than being painted on for the benefit of others. Her father noticed, of course, but he had the good grace not to comment beyond a knowing wink that made Tabitha roll her eyes affectionately. Saturday arrived crisp and clear, the kind of autumn day that made Salida look like something out of a painting, with the mountains rising sharp and snow capped against an impossibly blue sky. Tabitha spent far too long deciding what to wear, finally settling on a deep green dress that brought out the color of her eyes. She told herself it did not matter, that this was just a friendly outing, but her racing pulse suggested otherwise. Quinn arrived precisely at 6, dressed in clean denim and a dark blue shirt that made his gray eyes look silver. He had clearly made an effort, his hair neatly combed and his boots polished, though the bandages on his hands remained. He offered her his arm, and they walked together toward the church at the center of town. The social was already in full swing when they arrived, the church hall filled with people talking, laughing, and sampling the food that covered long tables against the walls. A fiddle player in the corner provided music, and several couples were dancing. Tabitha spotted Clayton immediately, standing with his wife near the refreshment table, but for once, the sight of him did not send pain lancing through her chest. She was here with Quinn, and that was exactly where she wanted to be. They filled plates with food and found seats near the back of the hall. Quinn told her stories about growing up on a small ranch in Wyoming, about his parents who had passed several years ago, about learning to cowboy from his father and grandfather. Tabitha found herself telling him about her mother, about how she had learned to run the store after her mother died, about her dreams of someday expanding the business or maybe opening a lending library in town. "Why a library?" Quinn asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. "Because stories saved me after my mother died. I would read everything I could get my hands on, and for a while, I could be somewhere else, someone else. I think everyone deserves that escape sometimes." Tabitha paused, then added more quietly, "Especially after these past few months, I have been grateful for books. They do not lie to you or break promises." Quinn's expression softened with understanding. "No, they do not, though I confess I am not much of a reader myself. Never had the schooling for it. I could teach you if you wanted. I mean, if you do not already know how to read." Tabitha felt her face flush. "I am sorry, I should not assume I can read," Quinn said with a gentle smile. "Just not well, and it takes me a long time. My mother taught me the basics, but we never had many books, and ranch work did not leave much time for practicing. I would not mind learning better, though, if you truly do not mind teaching me." "I would like that," Tabitha said, and realized she meant it completely. The idea of spending more time with Quinn, of sharing something she loved with someone who genuinely wanted to learn, filled her with a warmth that had nothing to do with the crowded hall. They talked for hours, barely noticing the time passing until the fiddle player announced the last dance of the evening. Quinn stood and offered his hand, his bandaged fingers careful and gentle. "May I have this dance?" Tabitha hesitated. Dancing felt intimate in a way their conversation had not, a physical closeness that made her nervous. But Quinn's expression was patient and kind, with no pressure behind his gray eyes, and she found herself placing her hand in his. He led her onto the floor, one bandaged hand resting lightly on her waist, the other holding hers carefully. They moved slowly to the music, and Tabitha was surprised to find that Quinn was a good dancer, his movements confident despite his injuries. "Where did a cowboy learn to dance?" she asked, looking up at him. "My mother insisted, said that any man who wanted to be respected needed to know how to dance, read, and cook a decent meal." Quinn smiled at the memory. She was a firm believer in well-rounded education, even if we could not afford fancy schools. "She sounds wonderful." She was. "I think she would have liked you." The simple statement should not have affected Tabitha as much as it did, but she felt tears prick at her eyes. Before she could respond, the song ended, and people began gathering their belongings and saying their goodbyes. Quinn walked Tabitha home, the autumn night cool around them. Stars blazed overhead and their breath misted in the air. When they reached the store, Tabitha turned to face him. "Thank you for tonight. I had a wonderful time." "So did I." Quinn hesitated, then said, "I meant what I said about being friends, about no expectations. But I want you to know that I would like to see you again if you are willing. Maybe start those reading lessons." Tabitha felt something settle in her chest, a rightness she had not experienced in a long time. "I would like that very much. Come by Tuesday evening after the store closes. We can start then." Quinn's smile was brilliant, transforming his weathered face into something almost boyish. "Tuesday it is. Good night, Tabitha." "Good night, Quinn." She watched him walk away before heading inside, where her father was sitting by the fire with a book. He looked up as she entered, eyebrows raised in question. "It was nice," Tabitha said, unable to keep the smile from her face. "Really nice. He is coming Tuesday for reading lessons." Her father's expression softened into something approving. "I am glad. You deserve someone who makes you smile like that." Tuesday came faster than Tabitha expected. She found herself nervous as she prepared a small reading corner in the back room of the store, selecting a primer she had used to teach children their letters, and a few simple books she thought Quinn might enjoy. When he arrived, Hat in hand and looking almost as nervous as she felt, her anxiety melted away. "I feel like I am 10 years old again," Quinn admitted, settling into the chair across from her. "My mother used to sit just like this with me at our kitchen table." "Then we will make sure her efforts were not wasted," Tabitha said warmly. The first lesson revealed that Quinn had not been exaggerating. He could read, but slowly, sounding out words letter by letter and frequently stumbling over anything longer than 2 syllables. But he was patient with himself and determined, his brow furrowed in concentration as he worked through the simple sentences Tabitha set before him. "You are doing well," she encouraged after he successfully read an entire paragraph about a farmer and his horse. "Much better than you give yourself credit for. That is because you are a good teacher." Quinn looked up from the book, and their eyes met across the small table. Something passed between them, a current of understanding and growing affection that made Tabitha's breath catch. She quickly looked back down at the book. "Let us try the next page." The reading lessons became a regular occurrence. Twice a week, Quinn would come to the store after closing, and they would spend an hour or two working through books, gradually increasing in difficulty as his skills improved. But the lessons always extended beyond reading. They would talk about their days, their dreams, their fears. Quinn told her about his plans to save enough money to buy his own land someday, a small ranch where he could raise horses. Tabitha shared her evolving ideas for the lending library, how she wanted it to be a place where anyone could come, regardless of their ability to pay. As November turned to December, Tabitha realized she was falling in love with Quinn Nichols. It was not the wild, passionate infatuation she had felt for Clayton Winters, all poetry and grand gestures. This was something quieter, deeper, built on shared conversations and mutual respect. It was in the way Quinn listened when she talked, truly listened, his full attention on her words. It was in his patience as he worked through difficult passages, never giving up even when frustrated. It was in the small kindnesses he showed her, like bringing her wildflowers he had picked on his ride to town, or helping her father unload a heavy shipment of goods without being asked. But the memory of Clayton's betrayal still haunted her, making her hesitant to trust her own feelings. What if she was wrong again? What if Quinn was not who he seemed? The doubts circled her mind late at night, keeping her awake. It was mid-December when everything changed. Tabitha was closing the store on a Tuesday evening, preparing for Quinn's lesson, when Clayton Winters walked in. She had not spoken to him directly since discovering his marriage, had only seen him around town and successfully avoided any interaction. Now, trapped in the enclosed space of the store with darkness falling outside, she felt her hard-won composure crack. "Tabitha," Clayton said, his voice smooth as ever. "I was hoping we could talk. I have nothing to say to you." She kept her voice level, proud that it did not shake. "Please. Just hear me out." Clayton moved closer and Tabitha instinctively stepped back. "I know I hurt you. I know I should have told you about Millicent sooner, but you have to understand my father arranged the marriage. I had no choice." "You had a choice," Tabitha said coldly. "You could have been honest with me. You could have stopped writing me letters full of lies. You could have ended our courtship like a man instead of sneaking off to get married and leaving me to find out by accident." "I was weak. I admit that." Clayton's expression turned pleading. "But I still care about you, Tabitha. More than I care about Millicent, if I am being honest. She was a business arrangement, nothing more. You were real." Tabitha felt bile rise in her throat. "Get out. Just think about it. We could still see each other. No one would have to know. Get out of my store right now, or I will scream loud enough to bring every person on this street running." Clayton's expression hardened, the charming mask slipping to reveal something ugly beneath. "You are being dramatic. I am offering you something here, Tabitha. Do you really think anyone else will want you now? Everyone knows you were courting me. They will assume we were intimate. You are damaged goods." The words hit like a physical blow, confirming every insecurity Tabitha had harbored. But before she could respond, the door opened behind Clayton and Quinn stepped inside. He took in the scene immediately, his gray eyes moving from Tabitha's pale face to Clayton's aggressive stance. "Is there a problem here?" His voice was deceptively calm, but Tabitha could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had curled into fists. "This is a private conversation," Clayton said dismissively. "Miss Preston looks like she wants you to leave," Quinn said, his tone brooking no argument. "So I suggest you do that now." Clayton turned to face Quinn fully, his lip curling. "And who are you? Her new protector. Tell me, Cowboy, has she told you about us? About what we did together?" The implication was clear and utterly false. Tabitha felt shame and rage war inside her, but Quinn's expression did not change. He simply stepped forward, placing himself between Clayton and Tabitha. "I am going to say this once," Quinn said quietly. "Leave now and keep Miss Preston's name out of your mouth from here forward. If I hear you have been spreading lies about her or bothering her again, you and I will have a different kind of conversation. Do you understand?" Something in Quinn's voice, perhaps the absolute conviction behind the softly spoken threat, made Clayton's bravado falter. He looked at Quinn, really looked at him, and must have seen something that convinced him not to push further. He straightened his jacket and headed for the door, pausing only to say, "She is not worth this trouble, Cowboy, trust me on that." Then he was gone, the door swinging shut behind him. The silence he left behind was deafening. Tabitha stood frozen, humiliation washing over her in waves. What must Quinn think of her now? Clayton had made it sound like they had been intimate, like she was the kind of woman who would give herself to a man outside of marriage. The accusation was false, but would Quinn believe her, Tabitha? Quinn's voice was gentle. He turned to face her and she forced herself to meet his eyes, expecting to see doubt or disgust. Instead, she saw only concern and a simmering anger that was clearly not directed at her. "Are you all right?" "He was lying," she blurted out, "about us being intimate. I would never, I know." Quinn's certainty stopped her mid-sentence. "I know he was lying because I know you, and I know his type. Men like him always try to destroy what they could not keep. Do not let his words touch you." The simple faith in his voice broke something open inside Tabitha. She felt tears spill over, all the pain and humiliation and fear she had been holding back since Clayton walked in pouring out. Without thinking, she moved toward Quinn, and he immediately pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as she cried against his chest. "I was so foolish," she sobbed. "I believed everything he told me. I thought he loved me. You are not foolish. He was a liar and a manipulator, and that is not your fault." Quinn's hand moved gently over her hair, soothing. "You trusted someone who claimed to love you. That is what good people do. Do not let him make you ashamed of being good." Tabitha clung to him, drawing strength from his solid presence, from the steady beat of his heart under her ear. Gradually, her tears subsided, and she became aware that she was pressed against Quinn in a way that was definitely not appropriate for two people who were supposedly just friends. But when she tried to pull away, his arms tightened slightly. "Tabitha, I need to tell you something," Quinn's voice rumbled in his chest. "I know we said we were friends. I know you are not ready to trust someone again. But after hearing that bastard talk about you that way, I cannot keep pretending that friendship is all I want." Tabitha's heart began to pound. She pulled back enough to look up at him, and the expression on his face took her breath away. There was such tenderness there, such longing, mixed with fear that she might reject him. "I am in love with you," Quinn said simply. "I think I have been since that first day when I found you burning letters and saw your strength even in your heartbreak. I know I am just a cowboy with nothing much to offer. I do not have fancy words or poetry like Clayton Winters, but I can promise you this: I will never lie to you. I will never make you a promise I do not intend to keep. And I will spend every day proving that you can trust me, for as long as you will let me." The words were so different from Clayton's elaborate declarations, so honest and direct, that Tabitha felt her last defenses crumble. This was what real love looked like. Not flowery letters and dramatic gestures, but steady presence and unwavering honesty. Not promises of the world, but a commitment to show up every day and mean what he said. "I am in love with you too," she whispered. "I have been so scared to admit it because I was wrong before." "What if I am wrong again? You are not wrong." Quinn cupped her face gently in his bandaged hands. "Look at me, Tabitha. Really look at me. Do you see anything but the truth in my eyes?" She did look, searching his face for any sign of deception, any hint that this might be another beautiful lie. But all she saw was Quinn, steady and true, looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I see you," she said softly. "I see the truth. Then trust that, trust us." When Quinn kissed her, it was nothing like the kisses she had shared with Clayton. There was no performance, no attempt to sweep her off her feet with passion. Instead, it was tender and careful, a question and an answer all at once. Tabitha kissed him back, letting herself fall into the feeling, into the rightness of being in his arms. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right. I want to court you properly with your father's permission. I want everyone in this town to know that you are mine and I am yours." "Yes," Tabitha said, joy bubbling up inside her. "Yes to all of that." They stood there in the dim store, holding each other, until they heard footsteps upstairs that reminded them of her father's presence. Quinn pulled back with a rueful smile. "I should probably go ask his permission before he comes down and finds us like this." Tabitha laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "He already knows how I feel about you. I think he has been waiting for you to say something. Then let us not keep him waiting." They went upstairs together, hand in hand, and found Preston George sitting at the dining table with a knowing smile on his face. He listened as Quinn formally asked permission to court his daughter, explaining his current circumstances and his future plans, promising to always treat Tabitha with respect and honor. "You have my blessing," Preston said, reaching out to shake Quinn's hand. "I have been watching you these past months. You are a good man, Quinn Nichols, and I trust you with my daughter's heart. Just remember that I own several rifles and I am an excellent shot." "Papa!" Tabitha exclaimed, mortified, but Quinn just laughed. "Duly noted, sir. You will never have cause to use them." The courtship that followed was everything Clayton's had not been. Honest, respectful, and built on a foundation of genuine partnership. Quinn came to town every Sunday after church to take Tabitha for walks along the Arkansas River. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's minds as thoroughly as their hearts. The reading lessons continued, but now they were interspersed with stolen kisses and whispered endearments. Word spread through Salida that Tabitha Preston was being courted by Quinn Nichols, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. The townspeople had never particularly liked Clayton Winters, finding him arrogant and entitled, and they could see that Quinn was different. He was respectful to everyone he met, worked hard at the ranch, and clearly adored Tabitha. Even the town gossips, who had initially clucked their tongues over how quickly Tabitha had moved on, eventually admitted that the cowboy seemed like a much better match. Clayton and his wife left town in January, moving to Denver where his father had business connections. Tabitha felt nothing but relief when she heard the news. That chapter of her life was truly closed now, and she was grateful for it. If Clayton had never betrayed her, she never would have been burning those letters. Quinn never would have found her. They never would have fallen in love. In a strange way, Clayton's cruelty had led her to exactly where she needed to be. Winter in Salida was beautiful but harsh, with snow piling high in the streets and temperatures dropping well below freezing. Quinn could not come to town as often, as the ranch work intensified during the cold months. But he wrote her letters, real letters that were nothing like Clayton's flowery prose. Quinn's letters were simple and direct, full of details about his day and declarations of how much he missed her. Tabitha treasured each one, keeping them in a new wooden box that Quinn had made for her himself. When Valentine's Day arrived in February, Quinn managed to get to town despite a recent snowstorm. He brought Tabitha a small carved wooden heart he had made during the long winter evenings at the ranch. "It is not much," he said, almost shy as he handed it to her. "But I wanted you to have something that I made with my own hands." Tabitha held the heart, running her fingers over the smooth wood and the careful carving of their initials intertwined on one side. "It is perfect. I love it." They were sitting in the back room of the store, chaperoned by her father who was working at the front counter, but within sight. Quinn had been adamant about following all the social conventions, about making sure no one could question Tabitha's reputation or the honorable nature of their courtship. "Tabitha, there is something I want to ask you." Quinn took both her hands in his. His burns had healed completely, leaving only faint scars. "I have been saving my wages since I came to Salida. In the spring, Mr. Morrison is selling off a parcel of his land, about 40 acres near the creek. It is good grazing land, and there is a spot that would be perfect for building a house. I want to buy it. I want to build us a home there." Tabitha's breath caught. "Us, if you will have me." Quinn pulled a small ring from his pocket. It was simple silver with a small blue stone. "I know we have only been courting a few months, but I knew I wanted to marry you from the first day I met you. Marry me, Tabitha. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that good men exist, that promises can be kept, that love can be real." Through tears of joy, Tabitha said, "Yes. Yes, I will marry you." The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, as if it had been made just for her. Quinn pulled her into his arms, kissing her thoroughly despite her father's presence. When they finally broke apart, they found Preston standing in the doorway with a handkerchief, wiping his eyes. "Congratulations," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You have made an old man very happy." They set the wedding date for late April, after the worst of winter had passed, but before the intense work of summer began. Tabitha spent the intervening months making preparations, sewing her wedding dress, and helping Quinn plan their future home. He brought her sketches of the house he wanted to build, incorporating all the features she mentioned wanting. Large windows to let in light, a spacious kitchen, and a room that could serve as her library. "You are still determined to have that lending library?" Quinn asked one evening as they looked over the plans. "More than ever. I want to share stories with people the way they were shared with me. And now that we will have our own land, maybe we can build a small addition later, make it a real library that the whole community can use." "Then that is what we will do," Quinn said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world to promise her dreams. The wedding was held on a perfect April afternoon in 1883, with the mountains still snow-capped but wildflowers beginning to bloom in the valleys. The church was packed with townspeople who had come to celebrate, and Tabitha walked down the aisle on her father's arm wearing the white dress she had sewn herself, holding a bouquet of spring flowers. But she only had eyes for Quinn, standing at the altar in a new suit, his gray eyes shining with love and wonder as he watched her approach. When she reached him, he took her hand and held it like it was the most precious thing he had ever touched. The ceremony was beautiful but simple. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises to love and honor each other through whatever life brought. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn kissed her with such tenderness that Tabitha felt tears slip down her cheeks. The reception was held in the church hall, the same place where they had attended that first social together. There was food and dancing and laughter. Even some of the ranch hands from Morrison's spread had come to celebrate with their friend. Mr. Morrison himself gave a toast, praising Quinn's work ethic and good character, predicting that his new horse ranch would be a great success. As the evening wore on, Quinn and Tabitha slipped away from the celebration, riding together to the small cabin on their new land that Quinn had been working on all spring. It was not finished yet, but it was livable, with a roof and walls and a fireplace that Quinn had built himself. He had spent the previous day making it ready, bringing in furniture and supplies, making sure everything was perfect for their first night as husband and wife. Quinn carried Tabitha over the threshold, and she laughed with pure joy at the sweetness of the gesture. He set her down gently in the middle of their new home, and they stood there for a moment, just looking at each other in the firelight. "I love you," Tabitha said. "I love you so much that sometimes I cannot believe this is real." "It is real," Quinn promised, pulling her close. "This is real, and it is forever. No lies, no broken promises, just us, building our life together." When they came together that night, it was with all the love and tenderness that had been building between them for months. Quinn was gentle and patient, making sure Tabitha felt cherished and safe. Afterward, they lay tangled together in their bed, talking softly as the fire burned low. "You ever think about that day I found you burning letters?" Quinn asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "All the time. It was the worst day of my life, finding out about Clayton's betrayal. But it led me to you, so maybe it was also the beginning of the best part of my life." "Good riddance to that," Quinn said, echoing his words from that first day. "Everything that brought you pain before led you here to me, and I will spend every day making sure you never regret it." "I could never regret you," Tabitha whispered. They spent the first weeks of their marriage finishing the house, working side by side from dawn until dusk. Tabitha continued helping her father at the store a few days a week, but the rest of her time was devoted to building their home and their life. Quinn began acquiring horses, starting small with just a few mares and a good stud, but with plans to expand as their finances allowed. By summer, the house was complete, and Tabitha had started work on her library. She used the front room of their home, lining the walls with shelves that Quinn built. She sent letters to publishers in Denver and San Francisco, explaining her project and asking for donations of books. To her delight, many responded positively, sending boxes of volumes that she carefully cataloged and organized. She created a simple system for lending, asking only that people return books when they were finished so others could enjoy them. Word spread, and soon people from all over the area were coming to borrow books from Tabitha Nichols' lending library. She loved seeing the joy on children's faces when they discovered new stories, loved discussing novels with adults who had finally found time to read, loved being part of spreading knowledge and imagination throughout the community. Quinn's horse ranch began to thrive as well. He had a gift with animals, a patience and gentleness that translated to beautifully trained horses that were in high demand. By the time their first anniversary approached, they were financially stable enough to start thinking about the future in concrete terms. "I want children," Tabitha said one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and pink. "I want to fill this house with laughter and love." Quinn turned to her with a smile. "I want that too." A whole passel of children running around, learning to ride horses and read books. "How many is a passel exactly?" Tabitha teased. "As many as the good Lord sees fit to give us," Quinn said, pulling her close. "Though I would be content with just one as long as they have your eyes and your heart." Their first child came in the spring of 1884, a son they named Preston Quinn, after both their fathers. He had Quinn's dark hair and Tabitha's green eyes, and from his first breath, he owned both their hearts completely. Quinn was a natural father, patient and playful, spending hours with the baby even after long days working with the horses. Tabitha marveled at how different her life had become in just 2 years. She had gone from heartbroken and betrayed to married to a man who loved her utterly, with a beautiful home, a thriving library, and now a perfect son. Sometimes she thought about those letters burning in the fire pit behind her father's store, about Quinn adding his kindling and declaring good riddance. She was so grateful he had appeared that day, that his kindness had opened her heart to the possibility of love again. They had 2 more children over the next 5 years, a daughter named Margaret Rose in 1886, and another son named Samuel James in 1889. Each child was healthy and happy, and their home rang with the sounds of childhood. The horse ranch continued to grow, and the lending library became an essential part of the community. Tabitha's father eventually retired and came to live with them, spending his days teaching his grandchildren their letters and helping Tabitha manage the ever-expanding collection of books. In 1890, Quinn surprised Tabitha by building a separate structure for the library, a beautiful small building next to their house with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and comfortable chairs where people could sit and read. On the day of the grand opening, the whole town came to celebrate, and the mayor gave a speech about how Tabitha's vision had enriched all their lives. "None of this would exist without you," Tabitha told Quinn that evening as they walked through the new library together, their children finally asleep after the excitement of the day. "You believed in my dream and made it real." "I just built the building," Quinn said modestly. "You are the one who filled it with magic. We make a good team, the best team." Quinn pulled her into his arms. "Do you remember when I told you I would spend every day proving you could trust me?" "I remember. Have I kept that promise?" Tabitha looked up at her husband, this good man who had stumbled into her life when she was at her lowest point, and had stayed by her side through everything that followed. She thought about all the promises he had made over the years, to love her, to honor her, to support her dreams, to build a life with her. He had kept every single one. "You have kept every promise you ever made me," she said softly. "You have given me more than I ever dreamed of having." "Good. Because I have more promises to make." Quinn's eyes were serious now, full of the deep love that had never wavered in all their years together. "I promise to love you for the rest of my life. I promise to wake up every morning grateful that you chose me. I promise that when we are old and gray, I will still look at you and see the woman who captured my heart when she was burning letters behind her father's store. I promise that our love story will never end, not as long as I have breath in my body." Tabitha felt tears slide down her cheeks, but they were tears of pure joy. "I promise all the same things to you. You saved me, Quinn, not just that day, but every day since. You taught me that love is real, that good men exist, that promises matter. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." They kissed then, surrounded by books and dreams made real, and Tabitha thought about the journey that had brought them here. The pain of betrayal had led to the fire that had led to Quinn. Every moment of heartbreak had been worth it to end up here in this life with this man. Years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and joys. Preston Quinn grew into a fine young man who loved working with horses like his father. Margaret Rose developed a passion for books that rivaled her mother's, eventually taking over much of the library's day-to-day operations. Samuel James split his interests between horses and books, often declaring he would write stories about cowboys when he grew up. Tabitha's father passed peacefully in his sleep in 1895, surrounded by his family. They buried him next to his wife in the Salida Cemetery. And though they mourned him, they also celebrated a life well lived and full of love. The turn of the century found Quinn and Tabitha in their 40s, still deeply in love, still partners in every sense of the word. Their ranch had become one of the most successful in the region, known for producing quality horses. The library had grown to house over 2,000 volumes, and people came from surrounding towns to borrow books and attend the readings Tabitha hosted monthly. Preston Quinn married in 1902, bringing home a sweet-faced girl named Catherine who fit into the family as if she had always been there. Their first grandchild, a daughter named Tabitha Catherine, arrived in 1903, and Quinn cried when he held her for the first time. "We are grandparents," he said to Tabitha that night, his voice filled with wonder. "How did we get old enough to be grandparents? Speak for yourself," Tabitha teased. "I am still young and beautiful." "You absolutely are," Quinn said seriously, taking her hand. "You are exactly as beautiful as the day I married you. More so, actually. Time has only made you more lovely." Margaret Rose married in 1904 and Samuel James in 1906. Each wedding was a celebration not just of the young couple but of the family they were part of, the legacy of love that Quinn and Tabitha had built together. More grandchildren arrived, filling their lives with chaos and joy. In 1908, the town of Salida threw a 25th anniversary celebration for Quinn and Tabitha, honoring not just their marriage but their contributions to the community. The library was now an institution, and the horse ranch employed several local men and supported multiple families. The mayor gave another speech, talking about how two people's love and dedication had helped build the town into what it was. "I never set out to do anything important," Tabitha said in her response speech, Quinn standing beside her holding her hand. "I just wanted to survive heartbreak and maybe find some peace. But I found so much more than that. I found love, real and true and lasting. I found a partner who lifted me up and supported my dreams. I found a life beyond anything I could have imagined. And it all started with a simple act of kindness when I needed it most." She turned to look at Quinn, and the love in his eyes was as strong as it had been 25 years ago. "This man found me at my lowest point and showed me that good things still existed in the world. He taught me to trust again, to hope again, to love again. Everything good in my life flows from that moment. So this celebration is not just about our marriage. It is about choosing kindness, about keeping promises, about building something real that lasts." The crowd applauded, but Tabitha barely heard them. She was too busy looking at her husband, this cowboy who had added kindling to her fire and changed her life forever. That night, lying in bed in the house they had built together, Quinn traced the lines of her face with gentle fingers. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "Not a single one. My only regret is that I did not find you sooner so we could have had even more years together." "We still have many years ahead of us," Tabitha said, "and I intend to fill every single one with love." They grew old together, watching their children raise their own families, watching the world change around them. The wild west of their youth gradually gave way to modernity. Cars appeared on the streets of Salida. Electric lights replaced oil lamps. The pace of life quickened. But some things remained constant. Quinn still looked at Tabitha like she was the most precious thing in his world. Tabitha still felt her heart race when he walked into a room. They still held hands when they walked. They still talked for hours about everything and nothing. They still kissed goodnight every evening and good morning every day. In 1920, they celebrated their 37th anniversary quietly at home, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. Quinn was 61 now, his dark hair gone silver, his face deeply lined. Tabitha was 58, her auburn hair threaded with gray, her hands showing the wear of decades of work. But when they looked at each other, they still saw the young man who had offered kindling to a fire and the young woman who had been brave enough to burn her past and embrace her future. "Do you ever think about those letters?" Quinn asked that evening after everyone had gone home and they were alone again. "Sometimes," Tabitha admitted. "Usually when I am putting new books in the library or watching our grandchildren learn to read. I think about how much pain those letters caused me at the time, and how grateful I am now that things happened exactly as they did." "Good riddance to that," Quinn said softly, repeating the words that had become a sort of touchstone for them over the years. "Good riddance to that," Tabitha agreed, "and good grace for everything that came after." Quinn pulled her close, and they sat together in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn in the hearth they had built together. Outside, the Colorado night was cold and clear, stars blazing overhead just as they had on that first night after their wedding. Inside, the house was warm and filled with memories. Laughter echoing in empty rooms, tiny handprints on walls, photographs documenting a life well lived and deeply loved. "I would do it all again," Quinn said suddenly. "Every moment, every challenge, every joy, I would choose you every single time." "And I would choose you," Tabitha whispered. "Always you." They passed peacefully within months of each other in 1924, Quinn going first in April and Tabitha following in July. Their children said that she had simply decided she did not want to be without him, that her heart had been so intertwined with his that when he left, she followed soon after. They were buried side by side in the Salida cemetery, their headstones simple but engraved with words that captured their love story. He found her at her fire. She found her forever. Together they built a legacy of love. The library continued to operate for decades after their deaths, eventually being taken over by the town and renamed the Nichols Memorial Library. The horse ranch remained in the family for 3 generations before finally being sold, though the new owners kept the name in honor of the man who had started it. But the real legacy was not in buildings or businesses. It was in the love story that became legend in Salida, told and retold by grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and eventually by townspeople, who had never even met Quinn and Tabitha, but who knew their story. It was a story about heartbreak and healing, about kindness and courage, about choosing to trust again even when trust had been shattered. It was a story about a young woman burning letters from a man who had betrayed her, and a cowboy who added his kindling and said, "Good riddance to that," not knowing that simple act of solidarity would change both their lives forever. It was a story about how the worst moments can lead to the best futures, how destruction can clear the way for creation, how ending one chapter allows another to begin. Most of all, it was a story about real love, the kind that shows up every day and keeps its promises. The kind that builds a life together piece by piece, year by year. The kind that endures through everything life throws at it and emerges stronger on the other side. The kind that, once found, becomes the foundation for everything that follows. And in Salida, Colorado, where the mountains still rise sharp and beautiful against the sky, where the Arkansas River still runs cold and clear, where wildflowers still bloom in the spring. The story of Quinn and Tabitha Nichols lived on as a reminder that true love is real, that good people exist, and that sometimes the end of one story is simply the beginning of a better one. Their great-granddaughter, named Tabitha in honor of her ancestor, grew up hearing the story of how her great-grandfather had found her great-grandmother burning letters, had added his kindling, and had declared good riddance to the past that did not deserve her. She kept a framed photograph of them on her mantle, taken on their 25th anniversary, showing two people who clearly adored each other, their hands clasped tightly together. When she was old enough to understand, her grandmother told her the full story, about Clayton Winter's betrayal, about Quinn's steady presence, about the reading lessons and the courtship and the life they built together, about how one act of kindness had blossomed into a love that lasted 41 years and touched countless lives. The moral, her grandmother said, is not that you have to get your heart broken to find true love. The moral is that true love looks like someone who shows up, who keeps their word, who supports your dreams. It looks like respect and kindness and partnership. It looks like building something real together, day by day, year by year. Your great-grandfather Quinn understood that from the beginning. He did not try to sweep your great-grandmother off her feet with grand gestures. He just showed up, was honest, and loved her steadily. And that made all the difference. Young Tabitha carried that lesson forward into her own life, looking for someone who would show up, who would be honest, who would love steadily. And when she found him, a kind-faced teacher who reminded her of the stories about her great-grandfather, she knew she had found something real. She made sure to tell him about Quinn and Tabitha, about the fire and the kindling and the good riddance, about what real love looked like. And so the legacy continued, rippling forward through time, touching lives in ways Quinn and Tabitha could never have imagined when they stood together watching letters burn on that September day in 1882. Their love story became more than just their own. It became a beacon, a reminder, a promise that good things were still possible, that love could be real and true and lasting. In the end, that was the greatest gift they gave, not just to each other, but to everyone who heard their story and chose to believe that love like theirs was possible. That heartbreak did not have to be the end. That sometimes the person you needed most would appear exactly when you needed them. That saying good riddance to what hurt you could clear space for what would heal you. And somewhere, in whatever place souls go after the body is done, Quinn and Tabitha were still together, still holding hands, still looking at each other with all the love that had sustained them through 41 years of marriage and beyond. Still grateful for that September day when a cowboy added his kindling to a fire and said good riddance, not knowing he was really saying hello to forever. Their story lived on in the mountains and valleys of Colorado, in the library that still bore their name, in the descendants who carried their blood and their legacy forward. It lived on in every person who chose kindness over cruelty, honesty over deception, steady love over dramatic passion. It lived on in the simple truth that real love is worth waiting for, worth believing in, worth fighting for. And on quiet evenings in Salida, when the mountains turned purple in the fading light, and the air carried the scent of pine and wildflowers, if you listened carefully, you might almost hear the echo of a promise made and kept. I will love you always. I will be honest with you always. I will choose you always. Good riddance to anything that tried to keep us apart, and good grace for everything that brought us together. It was a love story for the ages, born in fire and built on ashes, transformed into something so beautiful and enduring that it could never truly end. As long as people believed in love, as long as they hoped for partnership and honesty and steadfast devotion, the story of Quinn and Tabitha Nichols would live on, a testament to the power of choosing each other, day after day, year after year, for all the years you are given. And really, in the end, what better legacy could anyone leave?